with every second you waste? Would you change the way you spend your time? Ryan never thought much about time until a mysterious encounter forced him to confront his future self, a version filled with regret, lost opportunities, and dreams left unfulfilled. Given a second chance, he embarks on a journey to reclaim his time, rewrite his destiny, and prove that every moment holds the power to change a life. This is a story about time, choices, and the unseen cost of procrastination. Will Ryan break free from his old habits, or will time slip through his fingers forever? Ryan had always believed that life would somehow sort itself out. Ever since he was a teenager, he had carried the mindset that there was always more time, that he could start working hard tomorrow, that his dreams could wait until he was ready. His father, Mr. Adams, was a disciplined man who had spent his entire life emphasizing the importance of time management, often reminding Ryan of an old saying, "Time lost is never found again." But no matter how many times he heard it, Ryan never truly understood its meaning. Every morning, he would wake up with grand ambitions. He had a long list of things he wanted to achieve: learning a new skill, starting his own business, reading books that could improve his knowledge. But as the day went on, distractions would pull him away. He spent hours scrolling through social media, watching videos, playing games, and chatting with friends about things that didn't really matter. He would tell himself that he deserved a little break, and soon, 1 hour turned into 3, then 5, then an entire day wasted. His father would often watch him with concern, shaking his head. "Ryan, how long will you keep putting things off? Success doesn't come to those who wait for the perfect time. The perfect time is now." Ryan would nod absent-mindedly, but the words never sank in. He always thought he had plenty of time to fix his habits, plenty of time to chase his dreams. One evening, as he sat in a cafe with his friends, the conversation turned to success and wealth. One of his friends, Adam, had just landed a high-paying job at a prestigious company. Another, Sarah, had started a small online business and was already earning more than she had imagined. They spoke about hard work, discipline, and how they had sacrificed their comfort to reach where they were. Ryan laughed and said, "You guys are too serious. Life isn't just about work. You need to enjoy it too." Sarah gave him a curious look. "Enjoying life is important, Ryan. But what are you enjoying if you haven't worked for it? What's the point of comfort if you haven't earned it?" Her words lingered in Ryan's mind long after the conversation ended. That night, as he lay in bed, he stared at the ceiling, feeling something he had never felt before, unease. He realized that while his friends were moving forward, he was standing still. He had nothing to show for his time, nothing that he had built, nothing that truly mattered. The next morning, he promised himself that he would change. He made a to-do list, determined to be productive. But as soon as he opened his laptop to work, notifications from social media popped up. One message led to another, and before he knew it, the entire day had slipped away. He sighed, pushing away the nagging feeling of guilt. Tomorrow will be different, he told himself. But deep down, he knew he had made this promise too many times before. Days turned into weeks, and Ryan remained stuck in the same cycle. His father watched in silence, hoping that one day Ryan would wake up before it was too late. One evening, as Ryan walked through the busy streets of the city, he noticed a small antique shop he had never seen before. Its wooden signboard was old and faded, but something about it drew him in. As he stepped inside, the scent of aged wood and leather filled the air. The shop was dimly lit, lined with shelves of clocks and watches, each ticking softly, creating a rhythmic hum that felt almost hypnotic. Behind the counter stood an old man with silver hair and piercing eyes. He looked up and smiled as if he had been expecting Ryan. "Looking for something special, young man?" Ryan hesitated. "I don't know. I just came in out of curiosity." The old man nodded knowingly. Curiosity is often the first step toward realization. He reached under the counter and pulled out a small, elegant hourglass with golden edges and fine white sand. "This is not an ordinary timepiece," he said, placing it gently in Ryan's hands. "It has the power to show you the true value of time." Ryan raised an eyebrow, skeptical. "What do you mean?" The old man's eyes twinkled. "Hold it close tonight, and you will understand." Something about the way he spoke sent a shiver down Ryan's spine. He wanted to ask more, but the old man simply smiled and turned away, as if the conversation was over. Ryan walked out of the shop, still holding the hourglass. He examined it under the streetlight. It looked like any other hourglass, but somehow, it felt heavier, as if it carried something more than just sand. That night, as he lay in bed, he turned the hourglass over in his hands, watching the sand trickle down in a steady stream. The rhythmic flow was oddly soothing. His eyelids grew heavy, and before he knew it, he drifted into sleep. Suddenly, he found himself standing in a place that was both familiar and unfamiliar. The streets looked like his city, but everything felt distant, faded, as if he was looking at a world that was slipping away. He turned a corner and saw a man sitting alone on a park bench. As he stepped closer, his breath caught in his throat. The man was himself, but older. His hair was streaked with gray, his face lined with exhaustion, his eyes dull and filled with regret. Ryan's heart pounded. Who are you?" The older man looked up and gave a bitter smile. "I'm you, Ryan. The you that wasted time. The you that thought there was always a tomorrow." Ryan staggered back, shaking his head. "This isn't real. This can't be real." The older Ryan sighed. "It is real enough. Look around you. What do you see?" Ryan turned and saw shadows of his past, the missed opportunities, the abandoned dreams, the moments he had let slip away. He saw himself saying "I'll do it later" over and over again, only to realize that later had never come. The weight of realization crashed down on him. "Is this my future?" he whispered. The older Ryan's voice was filled with sorrow. "It's the future you are creating. Every second you waste is shaping this reality." A wave of panic surged through Ryan. "I don't want this. I want to change." The hourglass in his hand began to glow, the sand inside swirling faster. A voice echoed in his mind, "Time is slipping away, Ryan. What will you do with what remains?" His heart pounded as everything around him blurred, dissolving into darkness. With a gasp, Ryan bolted upright in his bed, his skin cold with sweat. His hands trembled as he looked down. The hourglass lay beside him, completely still. The room was silent, but his mind was racing. He had been given a glimpse of what could be. The future he had seen was not set in stone, but if he continued on his current path, it would become his reality. For the first time in his life, Ryan truly understood. Time was not infinite. It was a river that flowed in one direction, and once a moment was gone, it could never be reclaimed. His father's words echoed in his mind, "Time lost is never found again." This time, Ryan was ready to listen. Ryan sat on the edge of his bed, his breath still uneven, his heart still racing from the vision he had just witnessed. The room was dimly lit, the only source of light coming from the small bedside lamp that cast long shadows on the walls. He reached for the hourglass with trembling fingers, staring at it as if it held all the answers to the questions swirling in his mind. Had it really happened? Was it just a dream? The memory of his older self's sorrowful eyes felt too real, too haunting to be dismissed as a mere trick of the subconscious. He looked at the hourglass again. The fine white sand inside remained still, as if mocking him, reminding him that time itself was both endless and fleeting. He ran a hand through his hair, exhaling slowly. Maybe it had been a dream, but the weight of what he had seen was undeniable. His older self had looked empty, regretful, trapped in a life shaped by lost time. He could still hear the voice, every second you waste is shaping this reality, A deep unease settled over him. For the first time, he felt the true weight of his own choices, the realization that the way he spent his days would ultimately decide the kind of life he would have in the future. He had always convinced himself that tomorrow was a fresh start, that opportunities would always be there, waiting for him. But what if they weren't? What if every moment he wasted now was a step closer to that hollow, defeated version of himself? His father's words echoed in his mind, carrying a meaning he had never fully grasped before. Time lost is never found again. It wasn't just an old saying. It was a warning. He stood up abruptly, pacing the room. His gaze drifted toward his desk, where his laptop sat unopened. He had promised himself countless times that he would use it to learn new skills, to work on a business idea, to start writing the book he always talked about. Instead, it had become a portal to distractions, an endless loop of mindless scrolling and fleeting entertainment. His bookshelf was lined with books he had bought with the intention of reading, but they remained untouched, gathering dust. His journal, meant for writing down his goals and reflections, lay blank on the desk. A deep sense of shame washed over him. He had been given time, precious, irreplaceable time, and he had been throwing it away without a second thought. The regret of his older self was not just a warning, it was a possible future, a reality he was actively creating through his own choices. Determined to break free from the cycle, he grabbed a notebook and a pen, sitting down at his desk with newfound urgency. He had always made lists before, but they were vague, filled with half-hearted resolutions that never turned into action. This time, it had to be different. He wrote down 3 things he had been putting off the most. 1. Learn a new skill that could help him build a career. He had always wanted to learn digital marketing, but he had never taken the time to start. 2. Fix his daily routine. He needed to stop wasting hours on social media and entertainment. If he didn't control his time, distractions would always control him. 3. Take care of his health. He had ignored his physical well-being for too long, making excuses for skipping exercise and eating poorly. If he wanted to be successful, he needed to start with self-discipline. He stared at the list for a moment, then underlined the word starting today. There was no more waiting for the perfect time. The perfect time was now. The next morning, Ryan woke up earlier than usual, resisting the urge to stay in bed and scroll through his phone. Instead, he got up, stretched, and went for a short walk outside. The crisp morning air felt different, as if he was experiencing it for the first time. He noticed things he had never paid attention to before, the way the leaves rustled in the wind, the quiet hum of the city waking up, the warmth of the sun as it slowly rose above the horizon. It was a small change, but it felt like the beginning of something significant. When he returned home, he opened his laptop with purpose. Instead of clicking on social media, he searched for online courses on digital marketing. He signed up for one and promised himself that he would complete it, no matter what. As he went through the first lesson, he realized how much time he had wasted convincing himself that things were too difficult before even trying. The information was right there, available at his fingertips, yet he had spent years avoiding it, making excuses instead of taking action. Later that day, he called his father. It had been a while since they had spoken properly. "Dad," he said hesitantly, "I think I finally understand what you meant about time." There was a pause on the other end, then a quiet chuckle. "It took you long enough," his father said, but there was warmth in his voice. "What made you realize it?" Ryan hesitated. He couldn't exactly explain the strange vision he had experienced, but he simply said, "I saw what my future could be if I don't change." His father sighed. "I'm glad you're waking up now, son. But knowing isn't enough. You have to act on it, every day. Time is like water slipping through your fingers. You can't hold on to it, but you can decide how to use it before it's gone." Ryan nodded, even though his father couldn't see him. "I won't waste it anymore," he promised. Over the next few weeks, Ryan pushed himself to break free from his old habits. He set a strict schedule, waking up early, limiting his screen time, and dedicating focused hours to learning. The first few days were difficult, his mind constantly sought distractions, and the temptation to slip back into old routines was strong. But every time he felt the urge to procrastinate, he reminded himself of the regret he had seen in his older self's eyes. He replaced meaningless entertainment with books that expanded his knowledge. He replaced endless scrolling with deep learning. He started exercising daily, feeling his energy levels improve. Slowly, his perspective on time began to shift. One evening, as he worked on a project related to digital marketing, he glanced at the hourglass on his desk. The sand inside was still, frozen in time, but he knew that the real hourglass, the one measuring his life, was constantly flowing. He had wasted enough of it already. His father's words echoed once more in his mind, "Time lost is never found again." But now, Ryan was no longer losing time. He was using it, shaping his own future with every passing second. Ryan's transformation was not immediate, nor was it easy. The first few days of his new routine were filled with moments of doubt and struggle. Waking up early felt unnatural, and the temptation to fall back into his old habits was strong. Every morning, he had to remind himself of the vision he had seen, of the older version of himself filled with regret. That image, burned into his memory, became his driving force. He started each day with a plan. Instead of letting the hours slip away aimlessly, he set clear goals for what he wanted to achieve. He dedicated time to learning digital marketing, practicing what he had studied by building a small website and experimenting with advertisements. In the past, he would have given up at the first sign of difficulty, but this time, he pushed through, reminding himself that growth came from discomfort. Social media, which had once consumed hours of his day, became nothing more than a tool. He uninstalled unnecessary apps, muted notifications, and resisted the urge to check his phone constantly. The first few days were challenging, his fingers instinctively reached for his phone whenever he was bored. But over time, the habit faded, replaced by more meaningful activities. One evening, as he was working on his laptop, he received a message from an old friend inviting him to hang out. In the past, he would have immediately said yes, eager for distraction, but this time, he paused. He looked at the work he was doing, thought about the effort he had put in so far, and realized that every choice mattered. If he kept giving in to temporary pleasures, he would never build the future he wanted. He replied, saying he was busy. His friend joked that he had changed, that he was no fun anymore. For a brief moment, doubt crept in. Was he being too serious? Was he missing out? But then he remembered something Sarah had said to him during their conversation at the cafe: what was the point of comfort if he hadn't earned it? Each day, he found himself becoming more disciplined. He set limits on entertainment, scheduled time for relaxation, but never let it consume his day. He started exercising regularly, waking up early to jog in the park before beginning his work. The first few days were exhausting, but he soon noticed a difference in his energy levels and mental clarity. One morning, as he ran past the old antique shop, he felt a strange pull to step inside. He hadn't been back since the night he had received the hourglass. As he entered, the shop was just as he remembered, dimly lit, lined with shelves of clocks and watches, each ticking in harmony. The old watchmaker looked up from behind the counter, his wise eyes filled with quiet understanding. "You've changed," the old man said, his voice calm. Ryan hesitated before nodding. "I think I have. At least, I'm trying." The watchmaker smiled. "Time is a teacher, but only those willing to listen can learn its lessons." Ryan glanced at the hourglass in his hands. Was it real? The vision I saw? The old man chuckled. "Does it matter? What matters is what you choose to do with what you've learned." Ryan nodded slowly, realizing that the answer didn't really matter. Whether it had been real or a dream, it had changed him. He placed the hourglass on the counter. "I don't think I need this anymore." The watchmaker studied him for a moment before taking the hourglass and placing it on a shelf behind him. "Time has always been yours to command. Now you understand its value." Ryan left the shop feeling lighter, as if he had shed the weight of his old self. Over the next few months, his efforts started bearing fruit. The digital marketing skills he had been learning led to his first freelance job, managing ads for a small business. It wasn't much, but it was a start. He poured himself into learning, improving his skills, and within a few months, he had built a steady stream of clients. His relationships also changed. While some of his old friends drifted away, others admired his dedication. Sarah, the friend who had once challenged him at the cafe, became someone he spoke to more often. She encouraged him, shared books and resources, and they often discussed their progress and goals. Having someone who understood the value of time pushed him to stay on track. One evening, he sat with his father, sharing everything he had been working on. His father listened quietly, nodding occasionally. When Ryan finished, his father placed a hand on his shoulder. "I always knew you had it in you," his father said. "You just needed to see it for yourself." Ryan smiled, feeling a sense of pride he had never experienced before. Years passed, and Ryan continued to grow. What had started as small freelance projects turned into a thriving business. He hired a team, expanded his skills, and built something he could truly be proud of. His discipline remained strong. He never let distractions consume him, never allowed himself to fall into the trap of thinking that there was still time to waste. One day, as he sat in his office, he looked at the desk where he had placed a small replica of the hourglass he had once received. It was a reminder, not of the past, but of the lesson he had learned. Time was not something to be spent carelessly. It was a currency, the most valuable resource a person could have. It was what determined success, happiness, and fulfillment. And most importantly, once it was gone, it could never be reclaimed. Ryan leaned back in his chair, watching the sands of the hourglass trickle down slowly. This time, he wasn't watching time slip away. This time, he was making every second count.